You're live.
Okay, I think we're live. So welcome to Mostly Peaceful with myself, Brian O'Shea. This is a Daily Clout column. And I hope if you're not already a free subscriber over there at Daily Clout, go ahead and sign up for their emails. You can use a great tool called BillCam. Lets you look at legislation. They have some communities over there. So if you want to start something, get some people together and start making a campaign of your own for whatever it is, head over to dailyclout.io. Full disclosure, that's my wife's website and company, Dr. Naomi Wolf. Some of you know her. And so this is our first episode. I'm here with hosting with me tonight is a former border agent and deputy in charge, J.J. Carrell. He's also a really great author. I loved his first book. I'm looking forward to the second one. And J.J., why don't you say a little bit about yourself?
Thanks for having me. I'm excited about just be able to speak honestly about topics that are happening right as we're speaking and the importance of it. A 24-year veteran of the United States Border Patrol. I retired in July of 2021, so not that long ago. And a lot of my expertise, obviously, is I focus on immigration. But immigration, I like to say, is kind of like illegal immigration is kind of like a mutant octopus with about 100 different tentacles that go and reach far and wide throughout America and every part of society, be it crime, education, healthcare, human services, whatever, and all of them. And I believe I have a very unique perspective because I was a frontline agent for over a decade as a journeyman agent and supervisor. In the second half of my career, I was in management and became a senior leader at the end of my career. So I'm excited about to talk about a lot of wide-ranging topics with you, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. And you spent a lot of time in the field. In any other case, it sounds like it'd be a blast. I mean, you're on the ATV, you're out in the open range. But as you said in the book, Invaded, it's God, I forgot how you put it, but it really caught my attention the way the border is like a living thing. Can you? And when I heard your descriptions of the field and the horrible accident you had, it sounds like a real hellscape out there. Can you give us a little perspective on what it really is like out there when you're working it?
It truly is like not only a different country to itself. It's almost like you get transported off planet Earth. It's that bizarre. Everything is strange and it's alien, and no pun intended. It just feels like, is this really happening? Am I watching this happen in front of me? And the way the fog would roll in, and just on the other side, is a steel landing mat fence. Now there's multiple fences, but when I was there, it was a steel landing mat fence from Vietnam, and that was what protected America from all the illegal aliens. But what it also did, but also, Brian, you have the pollution from Mexico in Tijuana, and then in Juarez in Texas, and the colors of the sky. You think about San Diego, where I spent the first decade of my career, dude. It's more beautiful than the movies and TV depicted. I mean, it was just like, I came from the deep South. I was born in Massachusetts, and my father moved around because he's a Secret Service agent, and spent all my really adult forming teen years in deep South. And I came to California for my new career, and I just like, oh my God, it's just spectacular. Well, as I would go to work every day, that beautiful blue sky and the ocean and everything would just turn abruptly to 180 degrees. You couldn't go out in the water because of all the raw sewage from Tijuana, so it was contaminated. You couldn't go out. The sky would turn like a orange haze because of all the pollution. And then it was the constant fighting, like physical fights every single day on the border. And then the border terrain.
About what year
I was there? Yeah, I came in 97. Okay. And I left in about 2007, 2009 from the actual border and went to the Western Pacific Ocean. But the border is completely and utterly unique, and especially where I worked in San Diego, because Brian, I would be sitting on Spooner's Mesa, and I detail this in my book. And Spooner's Mesa is a flat mesa, very high up, and about maybe a mile or two from the Pacific Ocean. and to my back would be Tijuana, like the road, Tijuana with the giant flag, Mexican flag flying and flapping in their the center of the city, and just degradation and poverty that you can't imagine. And then as I look to my north, which is not about a mile away, is Coronado, California, where it's depicted in the movies, and it's $10 million houses, and then even further away is Point Loma and La Jolla, and I'm like, this is bizarro, like bizarro world.
You described that. I've been right on the other side of where you're talking. I've been to Tijuana many times back when it was like the cool thing for young Army guys to do. Yeah, I mean, those are the good old days. It's like, 92 through probably 96. I was in that Southwest, like not Southwest, on the West Coast with the military. And yeah, we used to go down to, I went to Tijuana once because my brother was out there in San Diego, but then like Juarez, and went there a lot.
Horrible.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. What I noticed, you said that earlier, like the difference, like I remember looking, and so you could see like the lights on the American side and the lights on the Juarez side, and it was like white and yellow.
Yes.
And it was just so like you knew where the border was. And I had to be fair, I mean, I had a great time down there, never had any problems. You'd cross, you'd come back over, hold up your driver's license and yell American. That was it. You remember that?
Those days are gone.
Yeah.
It's a wild. It just was crazy. And then I would take details. They would force us to go on these 30-day details to hot spots across the border. And the hot spots were the eastern flatlands of California that bleed into Yuma, and then eventually was Douglas and Nogales, Arizona, that I went to multiple times. And it was chaos that you can't even try to wrap your brain around. The amount of people pouring over because San Diego was kind of shut down. We were really working with manpower and technology and blah blah blah, and it was working. So it's just the path of least resistance. So they all started going through the deserts of Arizona, and it was just. I remember the biggest group that I caught by myself. I arrested 53 people. I lost the 3 smugglers, ran away, but I couldn't chase them because I had 53 people in the ground, just me and 53 people. You threaten to do bodily harm, and you try to have as much officer presence as you can.
That's a lot of officer presence.
Oh my gosh! You can just tell them, look, you got nowhere to go. Like you got nowhere to go. I got helicopters coming. I got everything coming. We're going to find you, and you're going to die in the desert. So let's all stay here. We'll just bring you back to Mexico, and then you can try again. And that's the type of feeling it was. And it was the Wild West. It truly was the Wild West back then.
Wow. Tell really quickly, and then we'll get into some news. I gotta, because I want to move it along to the thing that just I keep thinking about, if you don't mind. But that part in your book about I think you were new, and it's really eerie. I mean, you really deliver, and not to minimize the severity and the importance of the topics, but you do feel like you're there when you read your book. And it might be easier for me because I've been in dark and hostile areas, and I know what that feeling is like. But it was well enough written where it does transport you there. Now, just really, this is a war story. So to the audience, I apologize. We're going to analyze some news here really quickly because there's a lot to go through. But you have to tell that story about when you tackled the guy in the tunnel, and then another guy came up on you, and something exploded over your head.
Oh yeah,
go ahead.
That just, and in that part of my book, I was trying to tell the reader that the violence is a real character on the border. It's actually a living thing that is present, and the border is alive, and it has no sympathy for the weak. None. And I found what in the border, it would devour the weak. It would just weak illegal aliens, weak agents. It would just devour those individuals. And one time I was on ATVs. I ran ATV unit. And
how big is an ATV unit?
ATV units, about 1 supervisor and 10 agents, and we would cover anywhere from 6 to 15 miles. And we were kind of a rapid response team because we didn't have to go on the roads, right? We could just fly through the hills and down the valleys. And what would take a vehicle and an agent maybe 4 to 5 minutes, which is an eternity, we could get there in 90 seconds, right? And then
Really
boom,
fast.
we would sack everyone up and move on to the next incursion, whatever that would be. But it was always violent, always fighting, always having things thrown at us. And this one time, I just happened to be hanging out north of, we call it Stewart's Bridge. It's a little tiny bridge that America built a sewage treatment plant, if you can even wrap your brain around this, to service Mexican sewage.
I can believe
America.
it. We're building. I mean, we're paying the pensions and teacher pensions of Ukraine.
Yes.
I can totally.
Isn't it? It's shocking. It's shocking.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a second.
But long story short, I had a smuggler go by. They would sneak across these rocks that we kind of that were built to create this sewage treatment plant, like big boulders, and they would slither across and through them and get north of the Tijuana River and then run to some vehicle or house that was there and hide. So the guy at Stewart's Bridge calls on the radio and says, "Hey, I got 4 people crossing. I think it was 3 or 4 crossing the border. They passed my position at Stewart's Bridge." And I said, "Hey, cool. I'm down here. I just happened to be driving through that area and parked and just kind of was just hanging out, waiting for something to happen." Said, "Hey, I'm north of you. I got him. Okay, I got visual of him." So I drove up. The guy came back down. We tried to squeeze him, and the smuggler took off. And I said, I'm a radio. I got him. You get these 2 guys or 3 guys. And I drive all the way down to the grates. And these grates, and you're seeing that now in Arizona, they're called open the grates for the water. So, but when they're open, people can just come freely. So if you can imagine a culvert, a big concrete culvert,
sure.
And I could never really stand all the way. So I knew that I'm 6'3", so I knew that they were about 5.5 feet high, maybe 5 feet, 10 feet wide. And I tackled him inside that culvert. And I'm only about 20, 25 yards away from the border wall, the fence. And it's all concrete area where all the sewage flows through, but it was dry that day. And he and I are inside the culvert, and I'm trying to get him under control and get his handcuffs on him. And you know this, if handcuffing somebody that's compliant is very difficult because it's clumsy and it's awkward. But when somebody doesn't want to be handcuffed, oh dear God, it is horrible, right? So I got this guy, I'm straddling him, he's under me, and he and I are literally, he's on his back and he's punching me in my face and I'm punching him, and we're just trading blows at each other. And all of a sudden I hear, when you're in a culvert, it's so loud, dude. It echoes, just the punches and the yelling. Yeah, and then all of a sudden this explosion, this thing whizzes by my head and explodes. And I look up, and the other smuggler is about 20 feet away, and he's been throwing these giant concrete mixtures with rebar and throwing it at me, and it's missing me and hitting the wall and exploding, and it's making this loud noise. And he and I are fighting, and I'm like, okay, well, I just went to training. I pulled my gun out of my holster. I went to he's my biggest threat, even though the guy underneath me is a threat too. And I start to punch out my weapon and get him in my sights and try to shoot him, because if one of those things hit me in the face, it's over with. He's gonna knock me out or kill me, and that guy's gonna get my gun and just put me to sleep forever. And I punch out, and all of a sudden I'm trying to get him in my sights, and this guy's fighting me. And I feel, when you get so dialed in, so focused, people understand you become very tunnel vision. And I'm focusing on this guy almost as if this guy underneath me not there. And I feel something grabbing. And it's strange because I can remember thinking, something's tugging on my elbow. What's tugging? Of course, the guy below me is tugging on my elbow, but I'm so focused on this guy, I can't. And I start feeling his hands get closer and closer to my hands. He's trying to take my gun. And I'm fighting him to get the gun. And all of a sudden, boom, another concrete piece comes flying at me and it shatters everywhere. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, I don't have a choice. I just don't have a choice. And another concrete piece explodes by my head. How I didn't get hit in that face, I'll never know. I just pulled my gun back, and he kind of got wrestled on the side, and I just jammed the barrel of my gun right in the back of his head or on the side of his head, and I started to pull the trigger. And I can remember, you know how everything slows down. You hear that all the time before you get in a shooting. And I remember thinking, all I can remember thinking was, dear God, this is going to be loud. Like, this is going to be loud. That's all I was thinking.
Isn't it funny the things you think in those moments? Like, I was in not a similar situation, but I was shooting, and I was thinking, I wonder if that place that my kid goes to daycare is safe, or like, did I order
Isn't it crazy? Your brain
did
changes?
I order that toy?
Yeah. And that's all I was thinking was, wow, this is going to be loud. I wasn't thinking, oh my God, I'm going to kill somebody, and the paperwork and the endless scrutiny of it. I just remember thinking, God, it's going to be so loud. It's going to be so loud. And I started to pull the trigger, and then he threw his hands out. Like, I'm not going to fight you anymore. I looked up, and that guy was gone, and I was able to reholster it and then place handcuffs on him and get him out there. And I just remember, and in my book, I was just trying to articulate, that is the typical day. The day could be nothing happens, which is a rarity, or it could just be just balls to the wall all day long of this type of insanity.
Yeah.
And I'm glad. I got several broken bones. I can't sleep correctly at night because my shoulders are all jacked up and my knee but I got out of there alive after 24 years, and I was in high speed units and very proud of my career. But
yeah, and thanks for your service. I don't think you guys hear that enough.
We get called many horrible names, and the irony of it, Brian, is the greatest irony of everything is to be called all these horrible names from congressmen and senators, and yet we're enforcing their laws. They created these laws, and I swore an oath to enforce what you passed, and somehow I'm a racist and a Nazi for doing what you put into law is crazy. We live in weird times.
Yeah, I mean, thank God I feel like I was prepared for these times, because I used to. Well, we've been through this so much, and you just people like, you're this, you're that, and I every now and then I'll weaken and I'll respond and I'll say, well, I pick one. I can't be a communist, a fascist, a theocrat. I can't be all of those things. So
all
just
those
pick one. But I always try to go ahead.
No, it just, and I write that in my book is I don't need you to buy my lunch or buy my dinner or put me on a pedestal, but just either shut your mouth or just a simple thank you, because me and the guys that I worked with did things in the dark at night that you don't want to know about. You like to sleep through the night and wake up and get your coffee and donut and go to work as if everything at night was good and calm and everybody was sleeping. It's not like that. Men like me were at the door fighting so you could sleep at night. So instead of critiquing how I kept you safe, how about you just shut your mouth or just say thank you and go on your day, and we can all just move along. But to Monday quarterback me as you're sleeping warm in your bed, where that savage that I arrested that is a serial rapist, that could be you. If I don't arrest him, he's free. He's not going to stop raping people or killing people in America. And this is happening it's crazy.
And you bring up a good point, and that almost brings us to our segue. We're going to talk about Danilo Cavalcante. Have you been following this guy? This Spider-Man that crab walked out of that jail?
Oh, yeah. And the Border Patrol agents got him, right?
Yeah, they got him good. Well, you bring up a good point, and that's, one of the points of this, and is to, we have so many, my wife has been dealing with this forever, and I myself now am getting a lot of this where, look, I understand people are busy. I'm busy too. Like I actually have clients that I work on during the day, and then at nighttime I'm up till 1 a.m. investigating things and putting the skills I learned in the government, well, the strategic skills I learned in the government, to do whatever I can. Because when this whole thing started, and by this whole thing I mean this, with the lockdowns, I knew this was beyond this flu-like thing, and I just felt like I had to my mission hadn't ended, and my work was in the intelligence field for a long time, years, and then the military before that, doing military intelligence for special forces. And to me, it never really felt like the same kind of acute mission critical feeling you guys had, because you're on the border, and that's a big difference. Like I can kind of screw up, which will suck because I'm gonna die and other people will die. But if you guys screw up, back then, someone's getting through the border, and it's just got to kill you to watch them after all that work. And this is how I felt when Afghanistan went down.
Mhm.
God, I was pissed. After all
Yeah.
that work, after all those lives lost, after all those, tumbles in caves with guys that want to take your head off with rebar, they just let them in.
Yep.
Just let them in. And I'm never going to caveat. I'm tired of caveat. I'm never going to say, well, I'm sure there's some good ones. It doesn't matter. You're breaking the law. You're taking something from me. And if you
Yeah.
want to get into this country, look, my dad was an immigrant. My son's grandparents are immigrants from Greece. Like everyone's got immigrants in their family, and they all went through a process.
Yeah.
And that's
And
the thing.
yeah,
And
it
they're
is.
like they're being used. They're being used.
Of course they're being used, and they're being used because the people in America, the corporate elites and the politicians want cheap labor, and then the other side of the aisle wants these votes because 99% of everyone that becomes illegally votes Democrat. I mean, I had someone challenge that the other day, and I was like,
Yeah, I saw that. I responded.
what are you talking about? That's a fact. Nobody even argues that. Okay, you want to say it's 98.9? Okay, we can talk that. I mean, we can
Where
split
would someone
hairs.
go to if they want to look these up? Because I'm a big sources and citations guy. Like if
You can
someone
just
wanted to with some good sources.
yeah. Well, then just go to any election results in
Okay.
New York City, California, where illegal aliens are allowed to vote, and just see where they all vote. They're not voting for Republicans. They're just not. Ironically, the where people are being returned to their homeland is Cuba and many times Venezuelans. And why is that?
Because they come
Because
from
they're
communist
escaping
countries.
communists and they're not going to vote for your same
I'm not
communist
going to
stuff,
vote for communists.
right? So
Yep.
that's the unique. Nothing happens. I'm a big believer, and I'm sure you are too, just from the time that we have become friends, that there's no such thing as coincidences. Things don't happen in this country just because. There is an order to it. There's a reason why this happens. Look, I'm just reading the Inspector General report came out today on the DHS, where it showed DHS in March 2021 to August 2022 released basically 1 million people for a round number, and 20% of them, they have no idea where they went. Like they have no record of them. They don't know what address they went to. And then the 80% of the total million gave addresses where it is duplicated address, meaning multiple families have used it up to 500 times. The same address is used, basically stating, the Inspector General basically stated, we have everyone that has been arrested and released, they have no idea where they are. And the belief that any American would believe that the Border Patrol or ICE has the capacity to be able to track 10, 20, 15, 30 million people. That's absurd. No one knows where these people are. They don't know who they are, Brian. They don't know.
No, I know. And it's just, I mean, you see it. Like, so, I mean, that's a great, so let's just segue right into that because, and I have a question about that I want to get to later, but it's, I'm really focused on health and human services. So for those people that don't know, health and human services, that's like the freaking, Amazon or Tencent of the government. I mean, they have authority over everything. And NIH, FDA, you name it. Just go to the org chart, JJ. I know you know this. It's an outsized amount of power. It's literally a government monopoly, and it's not run by health officials. It's run by lawyers. It's always lawyers. The current one, Xavier Becerra, he's a lawyer from California. And
he is, I don't mean to interrupt you, but he is both incompetent and grossly uninformed and a liar. And those are three terrible combinations to have.
Well, I think he also has an agenda, and we could get into that in another episode.
Of course.
Because he's big into the One Health stuff I've covered, and we'll go into that another time because that's a long conversation. I am happy to say that Dr. Henry Ely, you can find him online, but he's Energetic Health Institute. I've been on his team. I haven't been as active lately, but I helped initially get a grand jury a request for a grand jury investigation written up, and we had some guys serve subpoenas to Becerra and Walensky and Redfield, all of them, and so that's still in the process. I mean, it's a grand jury, so it's it's a slow moving thing, but I'm happy to say then that's how I got to know who this guy was so much. But and I even saw him kind of threaten Boebert at a hearing where he's like, be careful who you question. Like, who the hell is this guy?
You work for us. Yeah, exactly. They forget. I think that's the biggest thing, Brian, is all these people, somehow it's so distorted. They don't understand they work for us. We don't work for them. You answer to us. That's what a representative republic is. We go on days for that. But Javier Becerra, I've written several articles on him and done some extensive work, and it's so grotesque what he has done as the director of Health and Human Services, HHS. It's especially when it comes to child trafficking. This is the head guy, and he has no idea what the hell's going on inside his own agency. And I believe it's part incompetence, and I think it's part corruption, which is a terrible combination.
So I just want to read a comment, our first comment. So I do apologize, and I would ask that anyone viewing, if you could spread the word. I actually ran up into some time issues with the internet. It's my first StreamYard. I make no apologies, but we didn't really put the word out till like last minute. So Jay from Connecticut said it's crazy how underviewed this channel is. Thank you, Brian. You and your wife are doing the Lord's work, and JJ, of course. And if you could just spread the word, and thanks. That's a nice compliment from Jay from Connecticut, so I appreciate that. But yeah, if you're watching right now, we've doubled, so we're getting there. But if you're watching right now, please post this out on Getter, Twitter. My Getter is at Brian O'Shea, and then my Twitter is at Brian O'Shea SPI. And no, I'm not a spy. It was Stryker Pierce Investigations, my old company. And JJ, really quick, why don't you throw yours out there? So
my Twitter is at JJ Carrell 14. And you can catch that's the best way to get me.
Okay, so for those of you just joining us, I am talking to JJ Carrell. He's going to be hosting this a lot with me. We're trying to figure out, let's just always host. And we should be here every Thursday. That's the plan. We missed last Thursday. But we should be here every Thursday. And we're really going through a lot of the headlines, but we're really trying to connect them to, the bigger picture. Not everything connects. Everyone wants to connect everything. Not everything connects. Some things just happen. I think Ben Shapiro, whether you're a fan of his or not, he said it best about policy and the U.S. government. He said it's 50% Veep, like the show with Julie Louis-Dreyfus, where she plays the bumbling vice president, and it's 50% House of Cards. And having worked both in the field and right down the street from, I used to live on Connecticut Avenue, and I worked in the intel circles. It's true. Like, it is really true. Some of the agencies I worked at, when I'd see people on social media and the news, are like, oh, it was this agency that did this. They planned this all along. I'm like, I doubt it, because it's October and about half of them are going home at noon so they can write their personal reviews before the fiscal year is over. That's what people don't understand about who've never been in the government. I'm not saying, look, there's good people. I was there for a long time. I was there for 2.5 decades, but it's not like the movies. I mean, it's not. You just don't have those experiences. There's no Colin Farrell yelling, "I'm the knock," or anything like that. It just doesn't work that way. It's a giant bureaucracy, and it gets things done because it has a lot of money and a lot of resources. And so
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think that is a great, Ben Shapiro does make a great point, is that, and this is, you have a segment of the population in government that works their butt off and does what their job is, right? And they put blinders on, or they get in to a task force, or they're part of something, and they're working, they're staying in their lane, right? And then there's the other group that is just incompetent. They're just collecting a paycheck. We just kind of give them whatever they need to do, the bottom feeders. And then because of the bottom feeders, and because there's a big segment of us that are good, productive workers that are doing their job, then you have the other very kind of smallish, but big enough to make a difference, where they are all about rising up. They're on promotion track. They don't care about anything, they just care about promotion. And those are the individuals that end up in positions of authority that have never done the job, that begin to make policy every time. And you're looking at guys, I have guys that did that with me in the Border Patrol, and I would like, I know for a fact you've not even arrested one person in your career, and you're telling me how I'm supposed to run my unit in at night? Are you kidding me? You won't even come out at night because you're afraid of the dark, right? And we know, but those are, but
you
he's
actually
right.
People who are afraid of the dark.
Yeah. That is, isn't that crazy? And
not really.
You know,
I mean, I had soldiers,
it is, man.
I had soldiers that would come from like Fort Meade or those kind of, and they come out to First Special Forces, and we're doing an exercise for like 30 days for really no apparent reason, but just to go to the field so the lieutenant can get his tea. And they, we dig a foxhole with a, I always tried to pay the excavator guy off like before the exercise, so he wouldn't have to dig it. That's the black market that happens everywhere. But you dig this thing, and you're in the middle of the woods in Washington State, and I think the Ring had just come out, so they're like really creepy woods. And I'm like, hey, dude, just all right. So you're going to be here, so I'll be back in 4 hours. And he's out in the middle of like the Cascades. He's like, I'm not getting in there. I'm like, oh yes, you are. And he got in there with a little help. But the ones that dig in and have no choice, they usually, I mean, humans are adaptable. I rarely had someone that couldn't adapt, but they also had no choice.
You're gonna do it, right?
You're going to do it, and we're deployed.
Yeah, but it's amazing. It's really, when I look back on my career and I think about the totality of the arrest and the quality arrest and getting Sinaloa cartel drug members and loads and on and on and on, there's only a small group of guys that did it, right? It just really comes down to, do you have the ability, number one, and then do you have the courage or lack of truly reason to go into these very, very dangerous situations and then just do it, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people did not want to do that. And that was okay, because that allowed me to have more opportunities to do those type of adventures, if you will, in the Border Patrol. So gotcha. I love it. I miss it, right? I'm retired, but I would kill to get on my ATV and ride around with gun on my hip and be with other guys that are like me and
come for a visit. I do that every morning. I have an ATV, I have a gun, and I ride around my property. So it's probably a lot safer for now. Anyways, let's go into some news, and it's good to talk about this stuff, because I think a lot of people do have that misconception, and I've learned some patience with people. I'll just say this final thing about that, and what I always tell people is this: remember what we know about government bureaucracies, okay? And most of the good work, like most of the high-speed stuff you see and the high tech you see, tends to be like, I'm in the I'm in the private intelligence world, but that's where you see the cool stuff. Like, that's where you see the cool tech. That's where you see everything, because whether you're working for a law firm, or my last client was a major enterprise on a Native American reservation out in the Northwest, they had lots of money, and they gave me a credit card. They're like, yeah, you need a drone, go buy a drone. And what a great job. And but when I was working and I was a contractor. I was working for SAIC and Booz Allen before that, side by side. I mean, it's the same thing, a different color badge, and you make a little more money and you get paid by different people. Yeah. Better benefits. But the thing was, what I found was that we were the subject matter experts. We had the depth of knowledge, the contractors, because we were cursed. Remember during the war on terror, oh, those contractors, they could do whatever they want. And really, but we got to stay because they would move the government employees around every 2 years for career development. So I'd see people on Fox News and they're like nuclear biological threat X. Now I see the same people and it's like Russian expert. That dude ain't no Russian expert. That dude's got 2 years on the Russia desk. He's no Russian expert.
And that's, I feel the same. I see guys talking about the border and I'm just like, dear God, this is border 101. And you don't even know how to articulate border 101. You're not even asking or even trying to articulate exactly what's why, how are you so ignorant? And I have to remind myself, wait a minute, these people this is all surface level understanding. And they want you to be uninformed. They don't want you to understand that 7 million people have crossed the border and they've released almost 7 million and another 7 million cross undetected because 80% of the border is unmanned at any given time. And that should scare you, right? But they don't want that to come out. They want to tell you that this is normal. This is normal that's happening on the border. It's not.
Well, that's a good segue into messaging and covert influence of the government. So the thing I noticed that really caught my eye last night was this Cavalcante. I believe he's Brazilian, and I don't want to attempt to pull it up on the screen because I've never used this before. So I'll walk you through it. But he's the guy. He's from Brazil. Apparently, he murdered his ex-girlfriend and several other people. And it looks like he escaped from a Pennsylvania prison, I think, last week or something. But he crab walked up the wall. I've never seen anything like it. He did this parkour stuff. And you see it on video. There must have been a gap. They're going out to the yard. And it's a little entrance that goes to the yard in the prison. And he does this thing where he extends his legs and his hands and goes right up. I've never seen anything like it. And he's out. So they had this massive manhunt. Parents were freaking out. And then, they got him last night. It was a huge, huge force. I mean, it must have been, I'm looking at the pictures now, and I will try to get this up because this is probably torturing the audience. Let me just see here. Give me just a second.
But anyway, it was a Border Patrol specialized unit called BORTAC, and they called them out and they were tracked them out.
While I'm doing this, why don't you tell us, because I never heard of that. I don't know border ops at all. Is it
this is kind of like a SWAT,
though, right?
Yeah, but they're all everywhere. They just deploy them and they go to hot spots. And do you remember, God, they just did this movie. They did the movie, I forget her name. She gained a lot of weight for the film, but it was great. It's on HBO about those two individuals that befriended a civilian worker in the prison and escaped, both of them. And remember, they lived out in the woods for, quite a while, and BORTAC found them and they killed both of them.
What does that stand for? It sounds like, it sounds pretty badass.
You think I would know what BORTAC, I just know it's BORTAC, but it is a specialized unit. Yeah. So it's like your SWAT team, FBI SWAT. This is our SWAT team. Very tactically sound, obviously, and have all the gadgets, all the tools, and they are highly, highly effective when it comes to this particular manhunting. They're incredible. They're absolutely incredible when they do this.
What makes them incredible?
And they just found them.
Like, what makes them?
I think Border Patrol agents in general, we are known for doing a lot with nothing, like nothing. Holes in the bottom of our vehicles.
That's the way they describe the Marines.
Yeah, you just here's your mission. I'm going to give you minimal tools, and you just go do it, man. And our mindset as Border Patrol agents is, well, of course I'm going to go do that. The police are not going to go in the woods and try to track these people. I've been in these task forces where I've had guys from SWAT teams, from sheriffs and stuff, and they're like, where can I help you? Well, I'm on the beach. I got 25 guys. I have me and 5 Border Patrol agents. I have 10 people in custody, but my guy with the infrared FLIR saw 30 total. So we're missing 20 in the hills here. And they're like, whoa, I'm not going in there. Okay, well, we're going in there. You can do perimeter. Then why don't you do perimeter? Because they will never go in the canyons in the dark of night like Border Patrol agents do. And that's what separates us from other law enforcement. And the other law enforcement, to their credit, would say, well, you're tactically not sound, right? You're not law enforcement tactically sound. And my response to that is,
to you?
Yes, they'll say that to us. And I've been told that many times. And my response is, yes, wow, you're correct. We are not tactically sound in the world that is street law enforcement. We're out in the hills, and a lot of times it was just me. You're just by yourself, and you got 10 guys that ran through a trail, and they're down in a river valley. Well, if you don't go down there and get them, then nobody's getting them. So that's the mindset of the Border Patrol, and it really permeates all the way up to the BORTAC, and they're very skilled and specialized. And obviously, the last several major big-time jailbreaks, they've hunted these men down and found them, and
so they
many times killed them.
Where are they based?
It could be anywhere. They're usually out of El Paso, I believe. That's where their main headquarters is, but they have them in certain sectors. Every sector has a BORTAC unit, and then they get their orders and they go, right? So they probably got an order that this guy was right. He was in the neighborhoods and kind of roaming around in the hills. So they probably thought, okay, who's the best unit to go after these guys? BORTAC. They're used to working the hills. They're used to tracking people through crazy area and terrain. So,
all right. Well, let me try to get this up, JJ. So just if it goes weird, I'm just letting you know. And audience, I do apologize if you have any StreamYard tips. Let me know. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I guess I just share my screen.
Yeah, you just share your screen.
And you should be running. I should make you run this next time. All right. So, all right. So let me share my screen here. And yeah, I just want to show the picture because it is amazing. Well, you know what, JJ? Do you not do this? Because I'm going to let you share your screen, and I'm going to pass you the link if I can't get it up soon. But anyways, what happened?
Yeah, go ahead and just try it. I'll get it. Do you have the picture of him all bloodied?
I just got
trying to show me
some news thing here. Yeah. And let me see here. So share screen, right? Present.
But you had to find this guy. This guy was violent, right? He was not going to not kill people.
No, yeah, he was violent, and what ended up happening is they got him. He was hiding out in the woods, and okay, we're gonna try that one. Okay, he's hiding out in the woods, and they caught him, and it's like 30 guys. Here, I'm posting it to you. It's like 30 guys posed with him. And my question to you is, having been in, I didn't realize these guys are border, because I looked at them, I was like, they look pretty hardcore for regular police. But they posed with them, and I haven't seen that since Pablo Escobar. And
that's kind of our culture.
Here, I'm going to
Border Patrol.
Can you see the comments? I'm going to just drop this into the comments, and maybe you could get it up for me. An audience, I do apologize. It will be better next time. And that's the last time I'll apologize. Okay, so my question to you is this. All right, so here is that. And I forgive the Fox News, but, it was the quickest one I could get. I don't watch Fox anymore, and I only ever watch Tucker. So, but anyway, what they're doing here, do you see that in the comments?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Is it the Fox News picture where you have the canine and the guy is laying down, his face is all bloodied? They're taking a picture.
Do you have your comments?
I see.
I just posted a link from Daily Clout.
Yeah, but I don't see where I can share, because I can't share because you're running the studio. That's why.
I'm going to.
But I do see you in the chat, the Fox News, and they pose. I think that's more. Go ahead.
I was going to say, what is going on there? So what I see is this, looking at the bigger picture, is this week was pretty significant nationally. All right. So what did you have? You had, okay, on the 7th, the New Mexican government, Grisham, announced that she was going to violate the Constitution, essentially, and do a
Unbelievable.
30-day gun ban on,
Yeah.
legal conceal and carry permit holders as a public health emergency. And so then that went into action on the 8th. I'm working on something right now where I've tied like $3 million or plus to from the federal government that you have to show fast results, and it's the end of the fiscal year. So let me see, 30 plus 8, that puts her at the end of one and right into the next one. So, and I think that's what she was doing, is, showing that I did it and give me more money, because she said that in her executive letter. But you had that happen. She's getting hammered right now.
Right.
Hammered. A judge blocked it already. And even like Ted Lieu, who, is no friend of guns, was, kind of saying, no, that's they're not on board with that. And if you watch the New Mexican governor's press conference, and I'll post the link, watch the two guys on both sides of her when she says, and I'm not going to quote, I paraphrase. One reporter says, well, but you can't go arrest people that have a legal conceal and carry permit. And she goes, well, we're trying to send a message. And she says, and maybe it's time that we do. And one guy goes, the guy in uniform, and then the guy next to her, he's like kind of moving, like making some distance, like just unconsciously. And for me, I don't think she's smart enough to be part of a big scheme. I think she is trying to get more money. But when I see that, so that happened, and then you had the official inquiry into the impeachment of Joe Biden. That happened. You had inflation numbers were higher than they expected. That happened. All hell is breaking loose in New York, and I'm in New York. And Biden's numbers have never been lower. And oh, by the way, you had 9/11 that he decided not to even show up for, and then lied about being, he said, I'm looking into the gates of hell on the day after. And I scrambled to find out, no, he's in a session of the Senate like all day long.
Yeah.
And I posted that somewhere, he got it. But then I found him on Charlie Rose later that night from Washington, so yet another, and people are sick of it. So you have all this stuff happen. Now, all of a sudden, after 4 years of, law enforcement and kind of being muzzled in terms of like, showing off their hard work. And then we wrap. Okay. Showing off their hard work. I haven't seen that in years. Is this a message? Is this an indicator that there's, it seems to me like a big kind of like FU, like because that posing with this suspect who's an illegal immigrant is going to, regardless of his crimes, because people tend
and he's bloody, right? His whole face is bloody.
His whole face is bloody. He got bit by, he got mauled by the dog, but that's why you surrender.
That is,
are they sending a message? That's really my question there.
Maybe they're so disgusted, as all Border Patrol agents are. They're disgusted. But that is a cultural thing within the Border Patrol, where we make huge arrests. We would take trophy shots, if you will. Yeah, it is a common tactic of ours. Is just kind of document, not for public consumption though, right? It's more for internal. Like, hey, these are our trophy shots of, we took down El Chapo Guzman's load in Santa Barbara, blah blah blah. Now these guys are taking their trophy shot on the aggravated felon that's a murderer. So
it looks like they looks like a news camera shot these.
Maybe. Yeah.
Okay, so the next question I have for you, because I'm getting the indicator that we got to wrap it up soon. Sorry, audience. We might have to come back even earlier than next Thursday to continue the conversation. The other thing is this, that I wanted to ask you. What is happening at the border? You said right before the show about the Somalis. And if you could, if we have time, listening to Sam Faddis on Frank Gaffney, I don't know, Sam, I know Mr. Gaffney is a great guy. so I trust his info completely. And Sam Faddis was in my world for longer than me. He's reporting about Chinese, and I think you talked about this too. Mm-hmm. Chinese nationals that are getting flown to the Bahamas, like these fighting age men, and then like landing on the shores. I mean, it's like D-Day.
We're seeing, Brian, I'm telling you right now, we are being invaded by military age adult men. And I'm seeing pictures coming from Central America where I'm looking at groups of, and I'm not exaggerating, anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 in a group, all males. And this one last video I saw was about, I would have to guess, right? Because it's so immense, about 3,000. And they were all military age men from the continent of Africa. And this is what's coming into America. And let me just tell you what happened. It got reported today. The Inspector General, which is internal affairs on a federal level, from DHS did an audit from March 2021 to August 2022 and looked at 968,000 people that were arrested and released. The DHS can't find 20%, over 177,000 can't find them. They don't have records of them. They don't know where they went. 80% of the almost million, they were using duplicate addresses. Up to at least 500 separate individuals use the same address. So basically what this IG report was saying was everybody that Biden has released no one knows where they're at. And I've been saying this for months and months and months, that our government has no idea. Now, why is that? I mean, it's important for so many reasons, but let me just tell you one, because we're pressed on time. Last week, prior to this IG audit report, we come to find out that special interest aliens totaling 75,000 just in FY 2023, which ends at the end of this month. 75,000 special interest aliens, meaning they have some connection to terrorist organizations across the globe, have been arrested and released in America.
Hold on. Did you say how many?
Okay. Let me try to get you to get some context of what I'm talking about. In 2022, you had 25,000 special interest aliens arrested and released. In 2020, you had 3,600. You go down through my career, I was a journeyman agent all the way to a top manager. I maybe in my career, directly or indirectly, had oversight of about 10, maybe 10 special interest aliens that came through my purview. Wow. And let's say a special interest alien came into my custody. Everything would stop. Everything in the station. We would send everything up to DC.
That's a big deal.
Terrorism. Right. Yes, it was enormous. It was not like an everyday thing. And if I would have released that special interest alien into the United States, they would suspend me and maybe fire me. But I definitely would be interrogated as to why you would do this. Now, you fast forward to from my career where we never arrested. All those people would be deported. We're releasing them all, Brian. 75,000.
75,000. Brother, that is like, I mean, that's a division and a half military size.
You have thousands of terrorists in our nation right now. And no one's talking about it.
Hundreds of thousands, apparently, because aren't there the numbers I think you and I talked about that Frank Gaffney and Sam Faddis were talking about on the Chinese nationals, like around 18,000 plus.
Yeah, you had last year, you had 1,900. This year, you have almost 20,000. And again, Brian, and the audience needs to understand this. This is just what we arrested. At any given time that you and I are speaking, or any time during a 24-hour period, 80% of the border is completely unmanned. That was never done before. There is no Border Patrol agents patrolling the border because they're all processing and transporting and releasing aliens 24 hours a day. We have never been this vulnerable.
To me, having studied, and I've got to wrap it up too, but having studied the Chinese Communist Party and their way of warfare, And regardless, now, one thing I've noticed, you mentioned the African nationals coming through, and I've gotten to arguments where people are like, oh, but that's not China. It's like, well, yeah, if they're in the Belt and Road, that is China. Like, that is a vassal of China. And that's what people don't understand, is like 64% of the world is signed on to the Chinese Belt and Road, One Belt, One Road, which means they took giant infrastructure loans from China, from the Chinese Communist Party in particular. And all is fine as long as you meet the terms. But if something goes wrong, they own you, and you could go to the congressional reports. I'll post them, where I was thinking, what if they treated it like the Cuban Missile Crisis, where, they were placing, missiles, the Russians were placing missiles back in the day. Oh yeah, no, it's happening. Syria and Pakistan.
We have an absolute standing army of terrorists and criminal aliens from across the globe that are in America, inside our walls. And there is no good outcome, Brian. I'm telling you, and I'm telling you from a guy that's been there and done it. I'm telling you that there is no logical outcome except destruction and sadness and despair. I hope I'm wrong, but I know I'm not.
No, you're right. And this is the thing, and I'll end with this. And people need to understand what the face of war looks like. Just because you don't see a war doesn't mean you're not at war, or a war is being set up around you. To me, it feels like chess pieces are getting into place. Yes. And it's going to strike, and it's going to strike hard. Don't forget, like the last mass shooting we had down there, I forgot the state, was a Chinese national. That's all they said. And they said nothing more about the shooter. There's just massive things happening. The major maker of rail cars in America, for like Boston, Philadelphia, the BART in California, and they're having major derailment issues with the T in Boston. They've had so many problems with that train, deaths, everything. Is CRRC, which is a Chinese-owned company. It's the biggest train maker in the world. And I went by there in Springfield, Mass, where it's at. There's a giant Chinese Communist Party, like PRC flag, flying over, and a little tiny, like, American flag outside the Dunkin', and it looks like a compound. And that's an hour from my house. So
I think you said it best, is that, and when you said this, it really struck a chord with me, because it articulates it perfectly. I do also feel as if chess pieces are being moved. Mm-hmm. And it feels as if I, being America, is just being surrounded and being kind of cornered in, and it's not a good feeling. And you can see it, and you can understand when you begin to connect the dots and you see everything. It is happening, Brian. Well, it is happening.
It's like people, and we got 2 minutes. So I'll just, before I go into my spiel, let me just say this really quickly. The first thing I learned in counterterrorism, way back in the 90s, early 90s, when it wasn't even a big deal to people, it was a big deal to me, is we would study historic terrorism cases and like backwards plan, like how they planned. And we'd find things like there was a bank robbery, there were this many cars stolen, there was like a Home Depot or like a logistics type place robbed. This banker was murdered. This person was murdered. And if you reverse engineer Afghanistan, you see that too. You see the things that lead up to August 15th. And you and I will talk about that another time. But really quickly, JJ, we got and it's going to cut us off, but put out your social media, but go ahead and say your last word, then I'll say my last word.
Sure. My social media, JJ Carrell 14 at Twitter. You go to JJ Carrell at YouTube to see my videos talking about the border and what's happening today, and on Substack as well. So.
Right. And our interview where JJ gets into some good detail. Advice for the audience. This is you always bring the heavy, man. You always bring the heavy.
You know what? I believe that the truth is you have to be educated and you have to be informed. You just do. And our founding fathers said that the only way that this country works is if it has a citizenry that is informed and engaged. And if you're not engaged and you're not informed, you become part of the problem. And I believe that.
Yeah. Well, and then I'll say this is, and my social media again is on Getter, I'm at Brian O'Shea, and then on Twitter I'm at Brian O'Shea SBI, and then of course here on Daily Clout, mostly peaceful. I've got more things to come. Substack is Brian O'Shea, investigate everything. and I'll post those links. I'll say this to people, and I've said this to close family members when they're like, "Oh, China's not a threat. They're way over there." And I always say to them, if someone like me or someone like you, and so many people with the backgrounds, if not academic, a combination of academic and been there, done that, been in the agencies, been to China, been worked with so many countries, and we know, and we're convicted on it, and we're convinced of it. I always have to ask people, why would you not want to prove me wrong?
Yeah.
I want people to prove me. So what I tell everyone is, prove me wrong, and then once you don't, because I wish they could. Unfortunately, we're beyond that now. We're in the operational phase now, and I really tell people, like, it's very serious. Like, you really need to be ready for power outages. You really need to be ready for regulatory warfare, where they change your tax codes and take your house, or mortgage theft. All these things are happening, and they're speeding up. So what I tell people is, believe it. Okay. It wasn't that long ago that we had people run, planes into our towers. It wasn't that long ago that, we gave a country tons of munitions and the whole country back, Afghanistan. Now the borders are open. Where those weapons are heading. So
yes.
It's counting down. JJ, thanks for bearing with me. I appreciate it.
We'll see you next week.
It's always good to talk to you. And if anyone has any questions, reach out to either one of us. And to everyone, hey, look, use your community, stay close to your neighbors, learn, and get it out. Shame people, and try to stay humorous as much as you can. All right. JJ, take care. And everyone else, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.